Congressman Warren Davidson serves for the fourth district of Ohio and is the 8th district of Ohio and is with us this morning. Also sits on the Financial Services Committee with us this morning, joining us from the Capitol ahead of this morning's session. Congressman Davidson, welcome to Washington Journal.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me.
We've been spending the first half hour, as you may have heard, hearing from viewers on the decisions made yesterday by the House Speaker in blocking two members, including Jim Banks and Jim Jordan of your state, from that committee, and the Republican leader pulling all 5 members off that January 6th panel. What's your view on what happened yesterday?
Well, look, I applaud Leader McCarthy. It was the right decision to pull our appointees to the commission. And it highlights why Republicans opposed it in the first place when we voted, because Nancy Pelosi's already drawn all of her conclusions. This isn't even a fig leaf at this point. She's totally transparent in how she structured it. It is they've already drawn all the conclusions. They just need the window dressing.
Is there any way in your thinking that there can be some sort of bipartisan investigation or nonpartisan investigation into this?
Well, I don't think there could be a nonpartisan investigation. We have 2 political parties that are going to appoint people, or we have one party that's going to appoint people. Pelosi seems that she wants one party that really chooses. And look, the idea that, oh, well, these Republicans are objectionable. When you have Adam Schiff, who told lies for years about Russia collusion on the commission, and then the chairman that was picked, he already drew his conclusions. He filed a lawsuit in February with the NAACP, so he already concluded it. So he's leading the commission, but he already thinks everything that happened is you know, an insurrection and this is to blame. He's just window dressing at this point. So the idea that Democrats can put people on there who've said and done inflammatory things, but Republicans can't have, you know, our A-list players, you know, lead on the commission, you know, it basically says, hey, we're concerned that these people might raise good points to me.
I want to ask you about inflation. You have expressed concerns over the administration's spending plans, over the rise in inflation. The Fed chair on Capitol Hill recently talking about inflation, among other things, and the Fed chair saying that he still expects inflation to ease up. What are your concerns, Congressman Davidson?
Well, look, last year the Federal Reserve in March and April did a great job. The market was in free fall. There was no buy side at any price for many things in the market. And that's a great use case for a central bank. They provided essential liquidity and stability to the market. But since then, they've been purchasing a massive amount of assets that have made it, I mean, we're not borrowing this money from anybody. No one's lending it to us. It counts as debt, but the Fed's just loading it up on their balance sheet. Just today, the news is out that they're talking about when to taper off their purchases. I mean, they're buying $80 billion of treasuries per month, and they're buying $40 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities per month. So where is that showing up in the market? It's inflating the market. It's an economic distortion. First, it drove up the stock market, the S&P 500. That grows the wealth gap, creates bigger inequality, and now Democrats want to dump even more fuel on that fire. I think we need to let our foot off the gas and let normal economy come back to life through lifting some of the heavy-handed government on it and pull out all this bonus money that's creating the economic distortions.
You have a background in business and manufacturing in particular. What's the longer-term effect if inflation doesn't ease up?
Well, it certainly hurts the working class the most. It hurts your hourly wage earners the most. And worst of all, your retirees on fixed income. You know, they have a hard time keeping up with the rate of growth. They've got a fixed amount of money that's coming into them per month, and as prices rise, those dollars buy less of what they need. So it's important to check inflation. That the Federal Reserve has 2 mandates. One is stable prices, the other is full employment, and right now they're failing on both. I'd say the third, as a regulator, they're also not doing a great job there. So when you look at what they're doing as a regulator, they're trying to balance out all the money that's being dumped in on the one hand with their monetary policy, with regulatory policy that keeps banks holding lots of things on their balance sheet. It's a little schizophrenic, and it's creating kind of whiplash in the market.
With the Delta variant rising, I wanted to ask you about legislation you've proposed on vaccines. It's called the Vaccine Passport Act. A measure that would prevent any level of government from issuing vaccine passports. It would make businesses liable for discrimination should they try to verify vaccination status, and it would exempt medical facilities, military personnel, and school. What's your reasoning for wanting this vaccine passport legislation?
Look, for the average American citizen to go back to their way of life, they shouldn't have to have a violation of their privacy to just resume normal day-to-day life, to go to a ball game, to take a flight, to go to a concert or something like that. All these things people are proposing vaccine passports for. Well, let me see your papers. I think that's an incredible infringement on civil liberties and our way of life.
Yeah, there's a story. Your bill would have a exemption for medical facilities. A story here in the New York Times this morning. The headline says more hospitals are requiring workers to get COVID vaccines. So you are okay with hospitals or health organizations like that to mandate that their employees be vaccinated?
Well, look, there are pragmatic considerations here. The law has long established that healthcare facilities have those exemptions, so we want the law to stand. We don't want it to be thrown out in court. It would be, I think, if it didn't provide those exemptions, and part of the reason is you have immunocompromised people in healthcare facilities that aren't good candidates for vaccines, so some healthcare facilities do require it. Now, should all healthcare facilities require it? In my opinion, no. I've never worked at a healthcare facility. The other thing, DOD's got a wide, path. They just have to show some reasonable cause for requiring it. And then lastly, schools have long been able to provide, a vaccine requirement for things that are FDA approved. This is still an emergency use. It's not FDA approved. Ohio banned requirements for emergency use. It probably will be approved at some point. And in those cases, there are religious, conscience exemptions. And the big thing that isn't getting talked about in the United States very much, but is around the world, is if you have acquired immunity from having recovered from COVID-19, that counts in most countries. It hasn't been counting in the United States, and this bill would say it has to count for an exemption for schools.
What sort of rights, though, do businesses have? I'm thinking sort of the cruise industry and their decision there in Florida, or even Broadway shows opening requiring people to be vaccinated before they come in. Is it as simple as comparing it to, say, businesses that have rules? You can't come in with a pet, no shoes, no service, that sort of thing?
No, I look at this as a civil liberties thing. I mean, it's the same sort of argument on public accommodations that said, well, look, you can't stay in my hotel, you can't get gas at my gas station, you can't eat at my restaurant. Those things were litigated in the 60s, and people said, no, to go about your way of life, you can't discriminate on the basis of, race, ethnicity, so on, so religion, so on and so forth. The same here. Look, you can't, one of the most private things for American citizens is their health status. And there was a pressure not that long ago where, hey, well, I have to know your HIV status before we can let you come anywhere. And America pushed back on that. So I think we'll get through this. We just need to keep the values in place that our founders created in our country that have served us well. We haven't amended the Constitution to revoke a right to privacy, but it is heavily infringed, and this bill aims to keep it from being infringed further.
So obviously a number of political and congressional issues on the table with